going to answer that from the standpoint of a small local business because, the biggest myth probably in the industry is just, SEO is the only way to go. And SEO is important. It's a long-term play, though. It doesn't necessarily work really fast. But for the local small business, it's that advertising is too expensive. And I hear it a lot. And I think, you're limiting your ability to create a business that has lasting impact and that can change you and your family's life by not advertising. You're basically working off word of mouth. Those are the best customers. I'm not arguing about that. They are the best customers. However, when you only work by referral, you're going to struggle to build a business.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Ryan Spelts. And Ryan, we're going to be talking about a few things, including sales and sales management and having a marketing focus. Also helping small businesses market locally and what that might entail and how you go about defining, your who and your why, and also creating marketing and content plans and why this matters. And also talking a little bit about B2B marketing and also marketing local versus e-commerce. So lots of great our topics of conversation. Really excited for Ryan to share. And with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Ryan.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Now, for the audience, if you haven't caught it, Ryan was a guest on our sister podcast, The Inventive Journey. So if you want to go catch his full journey there and hear a little bit more about how he got to where he's at today, definitely encourage you to go catch Ryan's episode there. But for those that haven't had a chance to go catch that, or just saying, hey, I just want a quick overview, or just to get to know Ryan a little bit, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks. Ryan Spelts. I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada. I live in northern Utah now, in a little town called North Ogden. And I've got a family. We've raised our kids here. We've got 5 kids, 22 down to 11. We're getting less and less here at the house. So they're moving out and doing their own thing, which is great. I've always been a salesperson, but I, in more recent years, have been a business owner as well. So for the last 7 or 8 years, we've had our own businesses. I've always tinkered with stuff, but our primary business is Connection Publishing, which is undergoing a name change to Connection Media because we're doing more than just publishing now. And then I own a Roof Max dealership with my son, and I also do some consulting on the side. So for sales and marketing, companies that need help with sales and marketing. So
awesome. Well, no, great introduction. A lot of exciting things going on with you. So now, without any further ado, diving into some of the fun topics at hand. And I don't know that there's any particular order, but I think that one of the ones that at least caught my eye in that, and probably some of the listeners, is seems like there's a difference, and it's maybe ever growing. I don't know. Maybe it's not growing, and maybe it's always been there. The difference between kind of looking at local marketing versus e-commerce. And I think a lot of times, as you go online, as you get, whether it's LinkedIn or other things, it's always feels like there's a huge focus, and I'm not saying it's a bad focus, on e-commerce and doing Facebook ads or Google ads or otherwise having SEO and online presence. I'm not saying you shouldn't have that as a business, but oftentimes I think it kind of overshadows a lot of times marketing local and kind of the benefits of that, and also a lot of times how businesses should approach that. So maybe give us a bit of an idea as to when you kind of look at local marketing, especially for small businesses, kind of what are your thoughts there? Kind of how do you approach it, or how do you think about it?
Yeah, it is definitely there's actually 3 different aspects. The third one would be business to business, which is a totally different ballgame too. But a lot of the marketing know-how that you run into online, because it is online, tends to be focused on either companies that are trying to market nationwide, or they have a really broad reach, or they're e-commerce, like you said. So I love Northern Utah because it's super entrepreneurial, but your average, plumber or bakery or restaurant or real estate agent, they really need to focus on a small local area. And so understanding that local market, first of all, is really important. What's popular there, what works well, what do people do with their spare time? That's important. But I always teach the very first thing you should do is define your who. So who exactly are you talking to? I met with a bakery owner the other day, and she was really sweet, and a new business owner, following a dream, loves to bake, makes some incredible treats. And she was like, well, everybody's my customer. Everybody loves treats. And I'm like, you can't market that way. You don't market to everybody. So we got.
And that's what I was just going to say, because it seems like, as a local, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but as a local bakery, the typical answer they would give is, well, anybody that likes to eat is my customer. And that's anything from a kid all the way up to, an elderly person. And It's everybody. And so how do you, taking that, because I agree, that's way too broad. And it's not that everybody doesn't like to eat and you might not have people, but that's not going to be your core focus. But how do you, I love the idea of the bakery because that's a great example. How do you start to define your who in a better sense than just everybody that likes to eat?
So the best example I've heard of this is from Seth Godin. If you've read Marketing is Simple or any of his books, he talks about the minimum viable audience. That means drilling it down to an audience that's super small, but a part of the overall network or the overall market that you're marketing to, but is big enough that you could run a business off of them, right? So for example, in your case, Miller IP Law, you've got a very specific person that you're going to talk to with that type of a business. And so defining who that is, asking yourself the questions. And if somebody wants to, they can go to our website. We have a worksheet. It's called the who and the why worksheet. It just asks those questions like, what are the demographics? What else do they like? What else are they interested in their life? So that you can think about where those brands are advertising, how those brands are attracting people in. So you can go to connectionpub.com, and then there's a marketing know-how button. It's all free. We don't require any information or anything. We want people to know how to do this. Define your who, right? And then the second thing is define their why, because a lot of philosophical marketing people will say, what's your why for being in business? And I'm like, that's great, but that might not be why someone would do business with you. So ask your current customers, ask people who like your stuff, figure that out, because once you know your who, you can figure out where your who spends their time. And then when you know their why, then you can tell that story over and over and over again so that who is attracted to it.
So let's and I love that, and I think that sounds like a great resource, and definitely encourage people to check it out. Let's dive into this one step deeper and say, okay, let's take the local bakery. You're located in Utah. We'll go with I'm located in Ogden, or that's where the headquarters are for the law firm. So let's say a local bakery just in Ogden, Utah, services a local community. And walk me through a little bit of kind of how I would, if I'm just opening up the bakery, I love to make fun treats. We'll say, I'll go with cupcakes. Cupcakes sound fun. So we're going to say, I do cupcakes and cookies and kind of those sweet treats, and it's my bakery. Walk me through a little bit of kind of how I would start to define that, that audience a bit better.
So with her, we just did this. So this is pretty easy to do. The main thing I told her is I was like, look, you're going to get a few people who are like, your treats are so amazing. I'm willing to travel from Salt Lake City, an hour away, to come get one of your cupcakes, for example. And I'm like, but you don't want to market to that person all the time, because that person's going to be rare. However, people who live around you in this area, in let's say a 3 mile to 5 mile radius, there's part of an audience, right? But then again, not every, like you got people in there who have sugar problems. Maybe they're diabetic. You got people who are dieting. You got people who are, not going to be drawn to whatever you're doing because of whatever situations in their life. However, there's a group in there that probably is. And so when we narrowed her group, who down, we decided her minimum viable audience was local families within 3 to 5 miles that had kids or grandkids. So parents with kids or grandkids, those were the two that we're talking to. And the grandparents one was because it's 4th of July week. There's tons of people in town because they're visiting grandma and grandpa who live here in North Ogden. And if grandma and grandpa know that they can go get awesome cupcakes, for example, at this location, they can go there, pick up those cupcakes, bring them home, and have them ready for the grandkids as they come and invade the house. And we want to speak to that messaging, right? Or if it's summer and mom and dad are busy and they're working and they're trying to figure out something to do for fun after work because they've been away all day, they can run over to the place, get some cinnamon rolls for the kids or get some cool homemade cookies. And it's something that, so you want to communicate to that specific audience. So that's where we dialed hers down, is people with kids or grandkids that are in 3 to 5 miles of this location that would also be, interested in sweet treats.
No, I think that definitely makes sense. Now, kind of following up. So how did you go about figuring that out? In other words, I think that people, once you figure that out, then that's how you go to market it. But, and I know, I'm not saying to go through that whole exercise. I'm sure there's a lot more involved, but kind of if you were to give the 1 or 2 minute version of it, how did you go about kind of defining that with that individual or that client?
So it's a great question. And it's a little more complex than just, like a bakery is a fairly uniquely simple deal, but obviously she didn't have a narrowed down audience yet. So we teach what's called a strategic marketing plan, and it's 5 simple steps. But number 1 is defining your who and why. And then the second part is, and the way that comes about is those questions, right? Like, what's your most common customer? What's the customer that's most praiseworthy of or praising towards you and says, you're amazing. I love your stuff. I love what you do. Then that gives you a lot of signs, like a lot of cues where you're like, okay, that person really likes us and here's why they like us. So you get it from current customers. If you're brand new, you're going to have to do a little more market research. You're going to have to look at competitors. You're going to have to look up keywords. What are people searching for on the internet when they're looking for a sweet treat? What are they automatically already doing? Because you can use technology to capture some of those people, but it'll also tell you a lot about your audience. And there's some cool tools nowadays too. Like I've used several times now ChatGPT and said, okay, if I'm a local tire store, what are some of the best marketing tools I can do to reach my local market? And it has some good information. You have to, take it with a grain of salt and make sure it's right, but it's still, for example, I did that with a tire store and it said do radio. Well, in our location, radio is not a good option for a tire store because we don't have any of our own radio stations. They're all Salt Lake radio stations. And so he's either going to have to advertise all over Kingdom Come for a tire store. Nobody's going to drive an hour for a tire store, right? So he just keeps it, he has to keep it more in the local area, and radio isn't an option for us in our particular area, right? Every area is different. You got to pay attention to that. But once you know those 2 things, by doing some market research, then you can start customizing. So another example I have is an attorney who's a family law attorney. He defined his who and his why, and he had 2 who's. One was a mom who is now going to be a single mom with little kids, and the other was an empty nest mom, right? And I said, where do you think they spend most of their time online? What are the places where they're going to go? And he said, oh, it's Facebook for sure. And I was like, okay, go home, because we were done with our session. And I said, Google that, make sure that those 2 very specific identities spend most of their time on Facebook. It wasn't Facebook. It was Pinterest and Instagram. And he was shocked. He knew for sure it was Facebook until he went and did the research. So sometimes you just got to say, where are they spending their time? What else do they like? If you're selling luxury purses, they also probably like luxury cars, right? If you're selling plumbing, they probably go to Lowe's and Home Depot. They probably own a home, and so they're interested in gardening and things like that. So you've got to think about what corresponding things that person's interested in, and then deliver to them in those markets or in those same areas.
No, I think that's a lot of great takeaways and piece of advice. Now I'm going to follow up with one thing you hit on, or at least one question I might have, which is, it seems like, and online is always the first go-to you always hear for advertising, right? Go to, as you said, Facebook. That's always everybody's on Facebook, and that's where I should go, or Pinterest or Instagram, or I need to have a SEO optimized website. And I'm not saying those aren't important, so don't or have that as a takeaway. But if you're a local small business, is that where you should start? Is that the place where you go? Or you also mentioned radio? You still have, even though maybe not as many people get it anymore, newspapers, you have local events, you have, all of these different things that you could be doing, or community events or farmers markets and that. And how do you kind of go about, and I'm sure it goes along with defining your market, but how do you go about kind of, let's say you take that bakery again, and hey, it's these people that are either, grandma and grandpas that want to have a fun treat for their grandkids, or mom and dad that are looking for something fun after they've been working all week to do with the family. How do you figure out where's the place to market them? And should it really just be online, or how do you figure out that mixture?
It's a great question. And the answer is it depends. So it just depends on the situation, the community. So Connection Publishing, our company, publishes a local print old school magazine, right? And we have customers who get the best results of any piece of marketing that they do out of our publications, but they're very hyper local. So it doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for like a local bakery. So it just depends. If you have a publication in your area like ours that's loved and that people read and they spend time in, then that can be a very good tool. We also have one in our community that's a competitor of ours called Hometown Values. With one of my other businesses, I actually advertise in Hometown Values because they cover areas that I don't with my publications, and print has been very profitable for us with our RoofMax business. So you just have to kind of determine based on your community. We do tons of community fairs, things like that. Like looking at what's happening around you and what's popular are super good ways to do this. Another option is to do what's called cross-marketing. If you can find a supporting business, like think about Coke and McDonald's, right? Those two market together all the time, and they are so benefited from each other all the time, because the best place to get a Coke, everybody knows, if you like Coke, go to McDonald's, because they come in every day and adjust the flavors and make it perfect every single day. It's even better than buying it in a bottle, right? It's just super, super good. So I think if you can find things like that, like if you're a local, a roofer, for example, we don't do roofing with RoofMax, we do roof treatments. Well, there's a local roofing company here that we work with all the time. Like we can co-market together, because if somebody's too far gone for our treatments, they're going to need a roofer. So find partnerships like that, find people you can work with. But to answer your question, that was kind of a verbose answer, but the truth is it does depend. And it really depends on who you're trying to reach. But the most important thing to remember, back in the day, it took 7 impressions for people to recognize your business and know what you did, what you do, what you do. Today, it's more like 25 to 30. Those 25 to 30 impressions are because there's so much more noise in the marketplace. There's so many more businesses. There's so many things happening on social media, even friends asking you to donate to their kids' soccer team and buy some chocolate bars, right? Those are all requests for our attention. So a business, that in order to stand out, they have to have layers. There should never just be, oh, I advertise on Facebook. We advertise on Facebook with our RoofMax business, but we also advertise in print, and almost always they see both of them. Both matter. It's like capturing their attention in multiple different formats. We also do other stuff with video and TV. All of those layers matter. And the bigger your business gets, you should consider having 5 to 7 layers of marketing, 5 to 7. They call it omni-channel. I hate that because it's a name that nobody knows what it means, but I call it layers, right? Magazine, social media, digital video. Like, what are your layers? What are you doing to reach your audience across multiple areas?
No, I think that's great. And I like layers better, just because omni-channel, this sounds like, hey, I'm everywhere to everybody. And it doesn't, first of all, it's not really tailored. It's not really, maximized for, kind of what people are looking for. And it's also kind of one of those nebulous words that nobody really knows what it means, but everybody throws it around anyway. So I like the idea of layers. So now help me or walk me through, and you started to touch on it, and I think hit on a lot of great things. If you're doing a local marketing, one of the things that we talked a little bit about was kind of getting a marketing and content plan. And you started to touch on that and went through it a little bit, but what are some of those first steps as to how you set up that plan, what you should be considering, what you do, so let's say you define who it is that you should be going after and why they might want your product. Now, how do you kind of build a plan around that?
Great question. So this is a little more, so there's a lot of different layers to this part of it too. So Some businesses are simple. They have like one thing a month that are happening, so they can just make an annual plan. You want to come up with a theme. I wrote a little playbook. It's called the Marketing Playbook that there's a free copy available on the website as well. But it basically just it gives some tips and tricks. But one of the things that we did is we talk about the themes each month, potential themes like what are the holidays? What are the National Donut Days on June 1st, Father's Day, Mother's Day, all that stuff, just to give people kind of a brainstorming idea for their ads in the publications, because our magazines come out once a month. However, if you're doing social media, for example, we also put together a social media planning calendar, and there's 12 different types of social media posts that you can do. And I'm not going to have them all memorized, but I can tell you some of them, right? One might be a promotional post. Hey, we're doing a discount on this. But if you do that all the time, people aren't going to pay attention to your stuff. So then you could also do a customer testimonial post. Then you could also do a company news post like, hey, check out our new logo or our new location. And then you could also do like industry news, like something big happened in the industry and here's what's happening. Here's how we're handling it. So there's 12 of those, and you could scatter those throughout a month and just kind of have a plan to, okay, we're going to do a promotional post here, but then we're going to do a cool quote of motivation here. And then we're going to do industry news here. And it gives you kind of a variety over a longer period of time. So it really does take making a plan and thinking about it, depending on what you're doing. Social media, you can post more often. In the magazine, you have one ad a month. In a newspaper, you might be daily. On the radio, you probably need to come up with a new ad every time something changes in the business. There's a mattress company that I work with up in Logan, another town about an hour north of here. And radio is their very best tool. And it's because that market is kind of an island, right? And they have their own radio station. And anytime they have something new happening in their store, any kind of cool new product, they get on the radio and talk about it. And it's very simple, very small town, but it works really well for them. And they're great at the follow-up, and they pull people into their stores because of it. So some of it's just testing and analyzing what's happening and making adjustments. That's actually the fifth step in a strategic marketing plan, is analyzing, not just analytics, because analytics can be a lie, right? Analytics can be like, oh, you got 10,000 clicks, but you only got one sale out of it. Like, what is it actually translating to? And are those clicks happening because the video is cute, or is it happening because people are interested in your business, right? One of the worst things in the world is to make something go viral, but it does nothing for you, So you've got to find ways to like target in and find out what is actually working. And then you got to ask questions too. So my son, with his Roof Max business that we own together, when he first started, he's like, Dad, I'm getting all the leads from Facebook. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And he's like, but they all come at the first part of the month. And I was like, okay, I need you to start asking. I already knew it was happening, but I said, I need you to start asking people, where else did you see us? And it was like 90% were like, well, I saw you in the magazine and then I saw your Facebook ad, so I clicked on it. It was like a universal answer. And I was like, do you see how those layers work? And he's like, yeah. He's like, that's pretty cool, because his calls would go like this at the first of the month when the magazines would come out, and then taper off for the rest of the month. You've got to ask those kinds of questions. What's happening? You don't always get the right answers. I did an appointment for him up in Brigham City, and I asked the couple, where did you hear about us? And they're like, oh, well, we saw it on Facebook. And I was like, cool, where else did you see us? We don't have a magazine in Brigham City, so I knew it wasn't the magazine. And they said, well, I heard you on the radio. And the wife's like, oh yeah, and I saw your billboard. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, guess what? We don't do radio or billboards. So I was like, people don't always know, but it is good to dig in and ask questions and say, what is actually happening, so that you can dial it down and make sure you're wise. You can't spend all the profit on market. I mean, we would love for you to. It would make our marketing company do well, but it doesn't mean your business will do well if all your money goes to marketing. So make good decisions, analyze as you go, adjust, say, you know what, let's pull some money from this. It's not pulling as well. Let's put it over here and try something else. You need a trusted partner if you're going to buy media, because there are options. They're buying it at wholesale. We buy it wholesale just like everybody else. So you can buy Facebook, you can do them on your own, right? I help some of my clients that they want to do it on their own, and they do it on their own. And those are options as well. So you just need to figure out what works for you, and then repeat and rinse and repeat and rinse.
No, I think that's a lot of great takeaways, a lot of great advice. Now, we're already reaching towards the end of the podcast, and it feels like we only just barely scratched the surface. So we'll have to have you come back on and share some more expertise sometime. But at least for this episode, as we start to wrap towards the end of it, I always like to ask one question at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to that now, which is, within your industry, what is the biggest myth and why is it wrong?
So I'm going to answer that from the standpoint of a small local business, because the biggest myth probably in the industry is just, SEO is the only way to go. And SEO is important. It's a long-term play, though. It doesn't necessarily work really fast. But for the local small business, it's that advertising is too expensive. And I hear it a lot. And I think, you're limiting your ability to create a business that has lasting impact and that can change you and your family's life by not advertising. You're basically working off word of mouth. Those are the best customers. I'm not arguing about that. They are the best customers. However, when you only work by referral, you're going to struggle to build a business, because unless you're just in an industry that happens to be really hot at the moment. But when that changes, you've got to figure out marketing. You've got to figure out a way to build an audience and bring that audience through your door, whether it's virtually or whatever. But you've got to do that repeatedly, and you've got to be able to replicate it over the long term to build a big business or a bigger business, and to have something that changes your life, right? That's not just a job that you went from a job to now owning your own job. If you want something bigger, you're going to have to find a way to repeat and get more and more business, and marketing is the way to do that. So it is expensive. It's just not too expensive. You just need to figure out how to make it work.
No, I think that's a great myth to dispel, and also some great piece of advice. So, well, now as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
So connectionpub.com is our current website. We're in the midst of rebranding. That'll change, but that'll still forward. We'll keep that URL. That'll still forward to us, but you can get a lot of the information, like my book and the other stuff, there for free. And ryanspelts.com, if they're just interested in following me. I do my own blog and some video training and stuff like that. So if people want to follow along and learn, they're welcome to there as well. And it's Ryan, RyanSpelts.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Ryan, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners are out there, you can help us to share this expertise with even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. Make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. Helps us to even reach more people to make sure their success. And on that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup, your small business, make sure to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Thank you again, Ryan, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. Appreciate it.